Hey everyone, Alex here from WarrenOffKeys.com, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use something called message collectors to listen for multiple inputs from a user. For example, here we have my tutorial bot online. I can do !test, and it's going to ask me what my name is. I can say Alex. It's going to ask how old are you. I can say 27. It's going to ask what country are you from. I can say USA. And then after that, it's going to say it collected 3 messages, and it's going to then print out the questions with the answers. So this is a very basic example. However, you can use these concepts I'm going to be teaching you throughout this video to create your own functionality with the same concepts. So we're going to be starting from complete scratch. As you can see here in VS Code, I have no files. I am inside the folder for this project within my console. Let's go ahead and start off by actually initializing our project and installing required packages. So I can say npm init-y to initialize my project. I can also, using 2 ampersands, this will append a second command onto the command line here. We can also install with npm install. We can install discord.js as well as WarrenOffKeys commands and .env. So now that this is done, we can go inside of VS Code and we can make a new file called index.js. This will be the main entry point for our application. We also need to make a folder called commands. And within here, we're going to make another file called test.js. You can actually name this whatever you want, but for demonstration purposes, I'm just going to name this test. Now within our main index file, we're going to go ahead and set up our project. So I'm going to first import discord.js. So const discord.js equals require discord.js. I'm also going to import WarrenOffKeys commands. So const wok commands equals require WarrenOffKeys commands. We can then import .env and configure it. This is going to allow us to actually gain access to our .env file, which we can create right now. This is going to hold our bot's token. This is something that you want to make sure that you ignore because you do not want to push this file to GitHub. Moving forward within our main file, we can then create a client. So const client equals new discord.js.client. And then we can listen for whenever this client is ready. We can use client.onReady for this. This is going to give us a callback. And for now, we're just going to simply console log ready. We can now try using this client and actually log in with the token. So client.login. Because we call the .env config function right here on line 3, we now have access to our environment variables from our .env file, which we will be pasting in here soon. But in order to access it within our index file, we can say process.env.token in all uppercase. This is going to try and access the token property, which will be specified by token in all uppercase equals, and then your token here. So I'm going to go ahead and paste mine in. Now that we have that, we can make sure to save our main file, and within our console, we can run this with node index.js, or alternatively, you can use nodemon, which will make sure it automatically restarts your bot whenever your source code changes. If you don't have access to nodemon, you can install it with npm install nodemon-g. However, I already have that, so I'm going to use Control-C to cancel, and I can just simply type in nodemon, and it's going to start up our bot, and we see ready in the console. We can also go to Discord, and we see that the tutorial is now online, so everything is working so far. Let's go ahead and configure WarrenOffKeys commands now. This is fairly simple to do. In this exact use case, we can just say new WarrenOffKeys commands and pass in the client. We can then save this. And we do get a couple warnings here. It's going to say that no commands folder is specified. It's going to use commands by default, which is fine. That's the folder we have right here. It says it loaded 1 command, so it detected test.js correctly. So let's now focus on our actual command here. We can export an object, so module.exports. We don't have to specify any specific properties here, such as minimum arguments or permissions. We can actually just specify our callback function, which is going to contain 1 argument, which is a message. Now there's a couple different ways you can set this up. The way I'm going to do it is I'm going to create an array of questions, and I'm also going to create a number that is going to count which question we are at, more specifically the index of the array that we are at. So let's go ahead and create a questions array. Within here, we can say, what is your name? We can also say, how old are you? And finally, we can say, what country are you from? So you could add in whatever questions you want. This is just an example, of course. And then we want to use let here because we're creating an actual variable. I'll create a counter and set that equal to 0. We now want to create a filter method, and this filter is going to return true or false depending on if we should actually collect this message. So I can say const filter. We're going to have 1 parameter here, which is a message. However, I'm going to call this m. That way we still have access to this message as well as the message that was originally sent. So within here, we want to ensure that we're only going to collect messages from the author who sent the actual command. So we're going to return true or false with an anonymous arrow function here. we're going to return m.author.id is exactly equal to message.author.id. So this filter will be ran whenever someone sends a message after your collector is created. And so we're going to gain access to new messages that were sent and then compare them to the command that was sent using this test command. If they're the same, then it will actually collect the message. If they're false, it will disregard the message and not care about it. Next, we're going to create an actual collector. And in order to do this, we have to import discord.js into this file as well. So const discord.js equals require discord.js. And then going back down into this part here, we can then say const collector equals new discord.js dot message collector. Now we have a couple different arguments going to pass in here. The first one is going to be the channel. That way we're only listening for messages from a specific channel. So we can say message.channel. We also want to pass in our filter method here. And then we can also pass in an object which will contain more information, such as the max number that we want to listen for. In this case, I'm just going to say questions.length. We also can specify a timeout here. So time could be 1000 times 15, which is 15 seconds. There's 1000 milliseconds within a second. And so I use this syntax here so I can easily change this to 20 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever I want. Next, we're going to go ahead and send the first question to the user. So we can say message.channel.send questions index 0. We can actually use index counter because it's more correct. Just in case in the future you do want to start on this first question for whatever reason, you can just adjust the counter variable. At this point, we're going to listen for whenever the collector actually collects something. So the collector is an event listener and it has a few different events that you can listen to. For example, collector.onCollect. This is now going to give us a callback method with a message. We're going to name this m as well for the same reasons as before. We want access to the message, and you might also want access to the previous message that was the actual command that was sent. So within here, we're going to want to make sure that our counter is less than questions.length. So if counter is less than questions.length, we now want to send the next question to the user. The reason why we do this is because we're going to increment counter at this stage as well. And so if you don't have this if statement, it will throw an error once you hit the last question because it's going to try and send a blank question because it'll be outside of the boundaries of this array. So we can simply say m.channel.send. We can pass in questions index of counter plus plus. Adding the plus plus at the end, we'll use the variable, which in this case is 0, and we'll then increase the variable afterwards. With that said, we also want to make sure we add plus plus here on line 19. So that way when we run the command, it's going to send the first question at index 0, and then it'll increase it. So the next time it sends a question, it'll be index 1, and then here it'll increase as well. So similar to the collect event, we can also listen to an end event. So I can say collector.onEnd. We can then have access to a collected object, which is going to be all the collected messages. And let's simply console log how many messages were collected. So I'm going to console log using backticks here. I can say collected, and then I can insert in collected.size. We can say collected that many messages. And I also want to loop through this, but the easiest way to loop through a collection is with a for each loop, which does not have a built-in counter. So I'm just going to say let counter equal 0, and then I can say collected.forEach. This is going to give us access to the value. And then within here, I can simply console log the questions index of counter plus plus. And then the second argument here, which will essentially just create a space in between these two properties, we're going to console log value.content because value is technically a message that was collected. So I can save this. Because of nodemon, our bot will automatically restart. We can go into Discord and I can run ! test. It's then going to ask me for my name. I can say Alex. It's going to ask me how old I am. I can say 27. It's going to say what country you're from. I can say the USA. And then directly after that, it said collected 3 messages. What is your name? Alex. How old are you? 27. What is your country? USA. And obviously this is a very basic example, and there's a couple different implementations you can change here. Also keep in mind that with a filter, you can make this an entire actual function here, and you can check other things. For example, you can check to see if the input is always a number, or if they're entering an email using some regex. There's a bunch of different things you can do here depending on your use case. Also, once the time expires here after 15 seconds, it will automatically call the end function. So let's say, for example, I set this to 3 just for simplicity. This now restarts. I can then try it out again. So I could say, Alex, how old are you? However, here it automatically timed out because it waited 3 seconds, and so it said it collected one message, and it also only collected "What is your name, Alex?" Also, if you want to make sure that the user answered all questions before it times out, you can simply compare collected.size with questions.length. So we can do that right here. We can say if collected.size, which is the actual number of messages we collected, is less than questions.length, we can then complain to the user. So we can say message.reply, you did not answer the questions in time, and we can return. We can then save this, the bot restarts. I'm going to answer 2 questions here, so exclamation point test, what is your name, Alex? How old are you, 27? What country are you from? And then I didn't answer that one, and so it complains me there. We can run this again. I can say Alex, 27, in the USA. And it's then going to console log those right here. Thanks for watching this Discord.js tutorial. If you want to learn more about Discord.js, consider clicking on the playlist you see on your screen now. If you need help, feel free to leave a comment or ask in the Worn Off Keys Discord, which can be found in the video description.